Alright, it's time to test out some 0 to 60 in quarter mile times in our 2001 Mazda 3. This is the 2.5 liter all-wheel drive turbo. Specifically, this is the sedan. Now, for comparison, I did a little bit of research online, and Motor Trend in the hatchback, which the hatchback was a little bit slower than the sedan when it comes to these performance numbers, they got a 14.5 second quarter mile, and their 0 to 60 was 5.9 seconds. And now Car and Driver did the same test with the sedan, which is what we have here today, and they got quarter mile 14.1 at 99 miles an hour, and their 0 to 60 was 5.6 seconds. So we're just gonna jump into it. I have a ton of different angles and views. We have the GoPro showing the speedometer, so you can see how that looks. We have the draggy performance timesheets I'm gonna share. We also have the draggy on-screen video that I'm gonna share. We're gonna talk a little bit about the variables as well, because I think that's something that's very important that a lot of folks don't talk about when doing this testing or showing the testing online. Now keep in mind, usually it's very hard for the average person to match or get close to these magazine numbers or manufacturer numbers, but we're going to see what we could do and how close we can get to that. We do have some things in our favor. We're on the East Coast, the DA was pretty low, and the temperatures are pretty low at 28 degrees, which you'll see it gave us a little bit of traction issues as well. So in this first video, it's just a 0 to 60. There's no launch control in this car, but I did some brake boosting, and it was full out brake boosting, brake to the ground, smash the throttle basically and let go, but you're gonna realize it spun. All four wheels, it spun for a good amount of time. I think upwards until maybe 4,000 RPM or more, I forget. We're gonna watch it and see. And then I had a little bit of hesitation. Traction was off. This one is zoomed more out. You're gonna notice the traction is off, but it still spun. And then it kind of, I guess, hung up a little bit because it caught some grip, and that really affected the 60 foot time. And anytime you're doing 0 to 60 or even quarter mile, your ET is very relevant to your 60 foot. A bad 60 foot is going to relate to a bad 0 to 60 and a bad ET, where your trap speed shows more power. So let's just go ahead, watch the in-camera video showing the speedo real quick, and then we'll show the draggy video and go over the data from the draggy time slip. And don't mind the service due soon with the check engine light that's on. There's nothing wrong with the car. I think it's just overdue for an oil change, but it's more or less because of the time frame, not the mileage necessarily. We don't put a lot of miles on the car, so I'm pretty sure that just kind of sets off from a time frame standpoint. But who knows, maybe it would have done better with a fresh oil change. One more thing, we actually have a little bit over half a tank of gas in here, which weight is a huge factor when it comes to this. At the end of the day, it's all power to weight ratio, so I just want to notate that as well. Obviously, if you're running close to empty, your times will be better as well. In this example, we got a little over a half a tank of gas. So as you saw there, it kind of spun up until about 4,500 RPM, and then I kind of backtracked to 4,000, caught grip and went, but all of that really made the car, the 60 foot, really bad for an all-wheel drive car, to be honest. So let's watch the draggy video real quick and see how terrible that 60 foot was and how that affected, what 0 to 60 time we got from that. So as you see here, our 0 to 60 was 6.34, and our 60 foot was a pretty bad 2.28. For reference, I have a Fiat 124 Spider, which is similar to a Miata, rear wheel drive, manual, and I got like a 2.2 and change for my 60 foot during the summertime when it kind of gripped a little bit better, which was still really bad. But then I had a Golf R before, which is, I guess you can say, a little more comparable to this, although that does have full-blown launch control and a DSG, which shifts a lot quicker. And that one I was able to get a 1.84. It was modified, it was tuned. But, this car is going to be a lot more capable with the 60 foot. Now let's go to the time slip real quick. And the other thing to notate here is the slope. -2.5. Anything below a -1 is invalid, because then the road is too much downhill, you're getting too much of an advantage, and it's just not valid. I thought the road is pretty straight, you can see in that video. That's why I always like attaching the draggy video as well, because I've seen the slope sometimes, I think at least, be off. But for the sake of, let's say it is right, but again, that slippage, that spinning up until 4.5 and then the pullback really affected that. Now the next one I'm going to show you was a full-blown run all the way up to a quarter mile, and it was much better. Both the launch, I didn't go full out in the sense that I didn't just hold the brake, mash the gas, and let go. I tried to modulate it a little bit in the sense that I didn't just go full throttle right away. I might have brought it up a little bit less, and then when I let go of the brake, started easing in, gave it some throttle. It did help. Let's watch that real quick, both the video of the speedometer and tach, and then we'll watch the draggy video and then analyze the actual results. So you can tell right off the bat that launch was a lot better. The first time, like I said, I had throttle and gas to the floor, which brought it close to 2,500 RPM, and then just dropped the brake to do that brake boosting and go. This one, I didn't throttle it all the way. I kind of held them around 2,000 RPM and then acted almost like a manual where I slowly let go of the brake and put in the, more throttle input, and I had a much more linear acceleration. And I gotta say, those shifts, they're pretty slow. I could just see like the transmission is just kind of like struggling and then it's shifting. The car itself, it shifts early. It always does that. Even when you're in sport mode, which I was today, it shifts early. This is one of those more modern engines where it's very torquey, very punchy, a lot of mid-range power, I would assume, because of the turbo. Because of that, it just shifts early, I guess to keep you in that torque curve where it has more punch to it. But when it does shift, it's pretty slow. I honestly believe if this car came in a manual transmission, we can get much better 0 to 60 in quarter-mile times, because I could just see that slow shift happening. I don't know 100% the specifics of the transmission, but it's not any fancy dual clutch, and you can tell because it does shift pretty slow. So now let's watch the draggy video with all the data on screen. So there we go, our 60-foot dropped to a 2.12, which in return dropped our 0 to 60 to a 6.03, and in a minute I'm going to show you why that is most likely in the 5s, to be honest. And then our quarter mile was 14.21 at 97.92, so almost 98 miles an hour. Now let's look at the draggy time slip to go over some of the other variables. So the first thing I'm going to show you is on the left hand side here, which is 0 to 60. We got 6.03, but check out that slope. We were at over a 2% incline, and as we already spoke about, anything below -1 is invalid because it's too much of a decline of a slope. Obviously, if it's positive, there's no such thing as invalid in the draggy. You could be going up a hill, they won't invalid the time slip. But 2.01, basically 2% incline, still getting a 6.03, I feel pretty confident to say this is definitely in the 5s, a high 5. Let it be a 5.9, 5.8, I don't know. I'm not going to do the math to see if you could figure that out. But the 0 to 60 realistically was probably in the high 5s. The 60 foot, again, as you can see in the middle one, was a 2.12, and that was a quarter mile of 14.21 at 97.92 miles per hour. Now the overall slope, it's actually pretty funny and ironic how it's 0.00. It went up and it went down. So the draggy's giving us a 0% slope overall after analyzing the up and down. But realistically, obviously going up a little, going down a little, it's going to affect your quarter mile. It's going to affect your acceleration. I'm not a scientist here. I don't know exactly, the slope happens at the lower speeds and then at the higher speed it starts declining. So according to draggy, 0%. At least the number isn't showing a crazy incline or decline. It's saying overall we were at 0. Oh yeah, and one thing that I gotta slide in real quick that I forgot to talk about initially is the 1 foot rollout number. You'll see it on the bottom left here. With the 1 foot rollout, the 0 to 60 was 5.74. Now when Car and Driver got their 5.6, that was with the 1 foot rollout. Most of these companies, if not all, I know Car and Driver specifically because they made an article in 2019 saying how they're going to be using the 1 foot rollout numbers for all the performance numbers going forward, will use the number with the 1 foot rollout. So a more apples to apples comparison here would be 5.74 with the 1 foot rollout, but that's still with my crazy 2% increase in slope, which would have made that 0 to 60 much lower if it really is a 2% increase. Now, as far as quarter mile, the Draghi doesn't incorporate a 1 foot rollout, but if we just take that same 1 foot rollout that it just did, which was basically 0.29 seconds difference from 6.03 to 5.74, if we knock off that 0.29 from our quarter mile of 14.21, that brings us down to a 13.92 with the 1 foot rollout. Now, those are some pretty impressive numbers, being in more or less probably the mid 5s 0 to 60 and high 13s. Cracking anywhere into the 13s on a stock Mazda 3 is pretty impressive. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, when it comes to these type of testings, there are so many variables. You guys can take it how you want, take this or that with a grain of salt. All I'm here to do is provide you with the data that I got, and at the same time just kind of bring a little bit of knowledge and touch base on some of the variables, and you guys can take it as you please. Acknowledge what you want, disregard what you don't, comment, let me know what you guys think about all this, but I'm just kind of putting it out there. So like I said, we got the Draghi numbers, then we have the 1 foot rollout numbers, which more or less would be that 5.740 to 60, which is told by Draghi to us, and then the quarter mile most likely being around that 13.92 second mark. Now, the last thing I want to show you guys, because I've been doing this testing on my other car, which is a 2017 Fiat 124 Spider Abarth. I also just got an RSX Type S that I'll be doing testing with, and plenty of other cars that I'm going to be doing testing with. And I really like this 40 to 100 as like a data, as a performance data time slip to see the performance of a car. The higher powered cars, a lot of folks do 60 to 130, but some of the lower powered cars, the medium powered cars, where they're not crazy high power, I really like 40 to 100 for that, and because it's a lot easier to quickly get it done in a safe environment and have that data point. So during that quarter mile, the 40 to 100 was 11.51. Now, I'm going to start putting together, as I start doing more and more cars and more testing, I'm going to start putting together a little online spreadsheet that shows the 40 to 100 times of all the cars that I test. So far, I just have this car and my other car, the Fiat 124 Spider. So this one got 11.51, the Mazda 3. My car, I didn't test it when it was stock, but between a few other people testing it, it was getting between 14 to 15. Mind you, that's a 1.4 liter turbo from the factory. It doesn't have a ton of power, but I did personally my test on the car when I was tuned phase 1, as it's called, which is just minor bolt-ons in a tune, and I got 11.94. Then I did it with my phase 2, which is a little more aggressive tune with extra bolt-ons, and I got an 11.56. Mind you, it was in warmer weather. And then after putting a bigger turbo on it with another flash on the tune, I brought it all the way down to a 10.22. So with that said, in the future, I'm going to keep testing more cars. If you enjoy this type of content, you want to see more testing and eventually have a nice little database of my own testing of 40 to 100, I like to always put the variables on screen. I don't necessarily have a track to test that. That's why I'm really big on talking about slope and temperature and DA, 60-foot times, because all that stuff is going to take into effect your performance times that you're getting. So if you enjoyed everything, give it a like, comment below. Let me know what you think about how I did this test, what numbers you guys have gotten, if you've tested your 0 to 60 in quarter mile or 40 to 100 with your Mazda 3, what version Mazda 3 you have. If you've done it modified, it would be nice to see how the performance numbers stack up from stock versus modified. And if you're interested, don't forget to check out drivendistrict.com. We have some cool shirts on there. We got the Enjoy Boost, smoke tires, not drugs, only turbo, lots of different stuff, including parts, air fresheners, and other stuff that we're always adding new stuff to. Subscribe again if you're interested in more. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.